Hi, you guys. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our next roof lesson colloquium. We're super excited. We're here today, and we decided to study or do a color study of Sap Green. We're very excited because every time we do these color studies, which were born out of the need or the time we wanted to dedicate to actually blend and mix color outside of a subject, we realized that we have more opportunities to really go deep into different shades, tones, tints, and complementary values of each of the colors. So yeah, that's why we talked about like sap green at some point this past week, and we thought that today could be a good opportunity to really study the color. And I'm gonna dive in right away. Hi, Jen. How are you? Thanks for being there.
Hi, I'm great. Happy belated birthday, precious
Thanks, friend.
unicorn.
You made it
Love
that much
celebrating you.
special.
Oh, good, 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 good. You deserve it all.
Thank you so much, friend. Yeah. So anyhow, so I'm just gonna switch to the palette. I'm gonna explain the colors. And I was shocked again in each of these studies. I just discover new things that I wasn't aware of, and you'd be amazed and surprised of different elements. We are also learning how to organize it, how to talk about the different shades. So this will be similar and a little bit different to past demonstrations about color studies. But so this right here that looks very dark, this is the sap green, and we're using Gamblin as the brand, our favorite brand essentially. And so the first thing that I wanted to say as the sap green, it's a very old color. Jen, you helped us find out that it was made originally from the the berries of the buck. What was the name of the berry?
Yeah, it was hard to pronounce. It's like buck something. Yep. And put it in the chat.
All right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but now it's like a chemically based. There are two different pigments. So this is a very interesting, very loved color. A lot of watercolorists, which I'm learning they're more into color studies than oil painters. They seek out different brands because every brand produces this color uses slightly different pigments. So there's even we found even this person that does color charge. So she essentially what she does is she would buy all the sap greens from all the brands in the market, as many brands as she can, and then she creates these color charts. And on the color charts, you would see the labeling of the name, the brand, and the pigments. And then she squeezes a little bit of the pigment or the paint and she lets it dry, and you can order those. So you can just order a sample of the all the sap greens in the market, and then you can decide which one you want to go for, which I never thought that this could be something that would exist, but it does. So sap green is mix of it's a mixture on with gamblin of two different pigments. It's a complementary color, which means that it's made out of two primary colors. And what we did right here, these are not exactly primary colors, but these are the closest to the pigments that made sap green as we could find. This one right here is cadmium yellow medium. So one of the pigments, let me just find, I need to bring my notebook right now. How about that? So for a little interruption. So one of the pigments is, buckthorn, by the way, buckthorn berries. And one of the pigments making the sap green, and that's important. And I just uploaded it on the folder, and I'm just gonna, yeah, one of them, it's di diar diarylite yellow, and the other one it's copper phthalocyanide, cyanide, not cyanide. Um, so what we did was add this cadmium yellow medium because the yellow in the sap green, it's really warm. It's almost like a shade of orange. And then we brought phthalo blue, which is very sort of like muted, one of the muted blues, I would say. The thing is that it's important when you use a color, it's important to bring the pigments or the mixtures or the primary colors that make that complementary, because that gives you an understanding of the opposite poles of that green. So when you have to create variations of a color, so sometimes what we do is we mix a lot of neutrals. But when you actually find out the composition of that complementary color, then you can understand how far you can go towards one extreme pole or extreme end, and then how far you can go to the other one. So for us, the best way to, or the first stage in explaining what a color looks like, it's to find exactly what the pigments are that make the color, and also find color that it's close to those pigments. So that's what we did. And then on the two corners up here, this is titanium white. And then we decided to bring a very neutral black, Mars black. So we usually make color studies with a cold black and a warm black, Van Dyke brown being the warm black and Payne's gray being the cold black. But this is one of the differences that we are incorporating when we study colors. We wanted to bring a simple neutral black, and Mars black is the darkest. And funny enough, we have it. We barely use it. It's been such a long time that we haven't used this paint, that when I squeezed it, there was a bunch of oil in it. So another reason why, if you don't use a color for a very long time, make sure that you store it by letting it sit on the screw on the cap of the tubes. It's made in this sort of like wider circle, just so you can store the paint upside down. And then over time, you don't have the problem that we had with this black, which is the oil going all the way to the top and then the paint being at the bottom of the tube. So let's get started. And then perhaps what I want to do before we get started is to just give you an idea of the two pigments that make the color. This is the yellow that I was talking about. I already forgot, but maybe Jen, you can help me put the name of the pigments right next to it. And this is a phthalo blue. It's there's a different composition of the blue. It's a little bit more red than this phthalo blue, but this is what makes sap green. And um, by the way, we should say that sap green is a green that we recently added to our palette, because we used to work with Viridian green because we thought it was the most balanced green. And then we realized that as plein air painters or painters of botanical elements, sap green is a very hard green to work with, because the greens that we see in nature, they have a lot of yellow. So that's the reason why this color is so much better. This is the color sample from Gamblin. They have the color in a much thicker application right on top, and then right at the bottom, a little bit of transparency. And then they do a glaze on one side, which is the exact same pigment, but with the medium. So there's no other component right here. It's just the color, but diluted with the medium, and you can see a little bit more the brilliance. And then you have the tint with white, the tone with gray, and the shade with black. So what I'm gonna do, let me just bring one old brush, and I'm gonna start mixing color. And then we're gonna do something new, because one of the things that I find useful is to try to name the colors that we create. So we did a little bit of a sample prior to this session, and then we found out certain colors that we hope we can name. Because when we do tints, it's really hard to remember the color when you say it's a lighter version of sap green. But there are some artichoke colors that we could do, some olive leaf colors that we can do with a tint that are so beautiful. And I feel like, naming those colors will help us in associating different shades of green with subjects. So first thing I'm going to do is just pick up a little bit of the sap green and show you what it looks like with a little bit of a transparent application. So it's a very yellow, warm green. And the second thing that I'm going to do, and this is something also new that we learned by watching a few videos, is that some painters, instead of using complementary colors in their palettes, they'd rather use either primary colors or just neutrals and only bring the greens, the purples, and the orange tones when they want that color to kick, to have more of a brilliant look. But they don't bring the complementaries right away. So what we're going to do, well, first of all, a little bit of this green right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to make that green. I'm going to clean the brush just by bringing the two complementaries. So this cadmium yellow deep, which is a yellow that's really, really warm. And I put more of this. And I'm going to bring the phthalo blue a little bit less in it. So what I'm trying to do is to create a viridian green, and I think that's pretty good. To create a viridian green out of like two components or two primaries of that complementary color. Because again, some very traditional, conservative, purist painters, they hesitate to bring these rich complementary colors right away. And instead, they work with very, very limited palettes that may just contain primary colors, black and white, and that's it. And once they find a subject that they want to create with a very intense complementary color, they'd rather mix it using primaries. And if they need that color to have a kick, or if they need it to be much more complementary, then they add some of the color to them. And that's something that I personally never do. I mean, I try to do greens with neutrals, first of all. But then if I need something much more saturated, I just bring the green right away and I squeeze it. So I find interesting that we can create similar colors using opposite tones. And that's the reason why we do this. Study the composition of the complementary so we can understand what kind of green we can get if we don't have this one, or if you want to depart from primary colors. You wouldn't be able to make this green just with cadmium yellow light, which is a very regular yellow, and ultramarine. So it would be a different kind of green, and we could just use a different the tutorial to find out exactly what kind of color it creates. But in order to make the sap green, phthalo blue, and cadmium yellow deep, something even a very light orange would work with that. All right, so we have done this, and then let's start doing. I'm gonna do a tint. I'm sorry, yeah, a tint. So what I'll do is I'm gonna start creating a tint. So a little bit of white and a little bit of the sap green. And I'm going to try to keep these colors without addition of any neutrals or any browns. And I just have a little bit, I just, let me bring one of the notes because I have different names for this. And we can just put it like right on the, and what I did, and you'd be amazed of the tones and the tints. Yeah, so there's some names for this this green, for example, olive drab um, or palm leaf. So by bringing the name of the color, I find that it helps me understand more how I could use this green applied to a subject. So I get again olive drab and palm leaf. So this could be a good color to paint those elements. A little bit lighter, a lot lighter. Let me just darken it a little bit more. And then we would have, yeah, it's all the same variation with the palm leaf, um, olivine, a different color, but it's similar to this olive leaf range. I'm gonna bring a little bit lighter sap green. So that means that with this green, we could create highlights, we could create tree canopies that are further away from us and they're covered in this hazy filtered light almost. We did a session a couple of weeks ago at the Forest Lawn Memorial Park, and some of the trees that were far away, they were hazy looking. So we had to bleach them. We had to create a filter to push them against the background. So a sap green with a tint using titanium white could just be a great color to paint trees further away um, from us. All right, and then I don't I don't drink alcohol, but there's this. I'm saying this because there's this um, name associated with a very pale green, gin green. So I don't know if that's because of the. I think I'm making a stupid association, but yeah. Um, anyhow, so even going lighter, um, I don't know about this one, but very, very light. They named this color milk. So, which to me, that doesn't make sense, but apparently that's one of the associations, and it should be a little bit lighter. So, very, very light. Um, with titanium white, maybe even lighter. I haven't drank milk in a very long time, but I don't think it looks like that cold. But anyhow, so I think I'm going to stick with the olive range and the palm leaf range in order to name a tint that I could use to associate with a subject. And for me, that's what I found helpful by studying the different ranges that I could get off of one color. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to create a shade by using the green. I'm just going to put the sap green right here without any black. And then this will just be super quick because I don't think we can make it too um, wide. The spectrum wouldn't be too wide because the Mars black, adding it to the sap green, it's going to darken the mixture quite a lot. So in that sense, the names of the colors that we get, let me see if I can find some of the names. Dark moss green. So a great way to associate a shade of sap green with a subject, dark moss. Um, Also, another name, army green. I'm gonna make this a little bit darker, but perhaps I don't know if that could be a good if we ever gonna paint anything with camouflage pattern. But again, this could be a great way to reveal what this color would be, what this shade would be good at in regards of like applying it to a subject. Perhaps some fabrics, perhaps the shadow cast on a green pillow. I'm thinking associations with shade of sap green with interior fabrics, people wearing clothes. So army green could be a good color to use in that environment or in that context. And then in that sense, so pine tree green, it's another color associated with shades of green. Just gonna move this, and I'm gonna bring some sap green. So perhaps the darkest parts of a pine tree canopy could be um, painted with sap green. So again, a departure from previous tutorials studying color. I went deeper after the last tutorial. I love studying color. I love color theory. And I love understanding what how where color comes from and where can I use it, and finding names associated with um, tints, shades, and tones of color help me understand uh, how I can organize my palette depending on what I'm about to paint. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to bring some sap green, and I'll just create a tone range. So sap green and gray. This is Portland medium gray, by the way. So this is also a very useful, very good way of using a very saturated color, because very rarely, I would say never, you can use the color squeeze out of the tube in order to paint something, because it's highly, highly saturated. So I'm actually going to continue creating a range of tones. Again, these are tints with white, these are shades with black, and these are tones. And what I'm trying to do, rather than just creating too many variations, I just want to apply these ranges so we can um, we can associate them with some color names, and perhaps that could help us find some subjects. So I love this because it also helps in regards of tones. Some names could be avocado green, camouflage green, artichoke green, dolphin gray, and titanium metal. So um, again, the ones that I love the most, artichoke green. We painted artichokes, I think, once or even twice as a subject matter. And when we painted artichokes, we never studied the color. We just went by observing the artichoke. But now that I know that I could make an artichoke tone using sap green and gray, I feel like I would be better prepared to tackle that subject. Avocado green is a very bright green, but knowing that it's a tone of the sap green also helped me understand that it's a little bit lighter and a little bit less saturated. And then again, other colors like camouflage and titanium. Perhaps I could bring that sap green in some areas to create a shade of a metal, a metallic thing. So next time I do still life that contains something that it's metallic and reflective, I will observe if there is a green cast. So perhaps I could incorporate that shade, or I'm sorry, that tone on the painting. So, all right. And then what I'm going to do after that, perhaps I'll do a bit of a range of this color, because or on this level, because what I want to do is create greens using more of one of the components, and create greens pulling the sap green towards the other extreme, because that would give us a range of analogous colors. Analogous colors are within the same family of colors. So what I'll do is I will bring some sap green and a little bit more of the yellow. And I'll do the same as I go, a few samples towards more of the yellow and less of the green. And I'm using yeah, I'm using that sap green, but anyhow, so some names or colors for this. I don't have that many. Hard gold, I don't know what the color is, but I think I need to find out more about different names for that. This could just be so complex and complicated. We only study the tints, the shades, and the tones, but I will find some names, some subjects that we could just use to paint um, with sap green and this cadmium yellow deep. And what I'll do right now is just bring some of the phthalo blue mixed with the sap green, and that just creates a much darker and colder naturally range of tones. So when you paint a monochromatic palette, um, you don't only have to use one color, black and white. You could use the colors that create that complementary. So without using the blue or the yellow, like full strength, you could create a range of greens that could go um, from the midpoint between those two to colors that are moving closer to one range or one extreme or closer to the other. So yeah, I think this is, I would call this the range of analogous colors. And I would create these colors by mixing the complementary with the two colors forming the complementary. I would distinct this range with the tints, the shades, and the tones, because here what I'm doing is using the same base and only changing the values. But here what I'm doing is moving the color needle closer or further away from one extreme or the other. So of course, out of this, I could just use some titanium white or some black, and then create tints, tones, and shades. And this would give me a really, really rich, infinite color palette to work with. So again, the value of limited color palettes is that they encourage us to focus on color temperature and also value rather than just associating something, a subject with color. So there is a benefit, and I think after these tutorials, we should try to create a paint using this very limited palette. But anyhow, so the most fascinating, I saved it for last. The most shocking and interesting, I would never think that would be the case. This is something that happens every single time, is to find the inverted color of the sap green. And in my mind, I just thought it would be sort of like orange, perhaps, or a really warm tone. The opposite of the color, it's the exact 100 degrees opposite in the color wheel. Well, I was shocked. I'm just going to share I'm going to share the screen. I was shocked to find out that, and what I did, let me see. Yeah, what I did was to bring, do I have it? Hold on one second. I didn't upload it. I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to upload it right now because it was shocking. It's purple. The opposite of this sap green is purple. And what I did was to take that color card and use an app to just invert the color, which means that it gave me the actual opposite of the color. And then I just got this ridiculous, gorgeous purple. So this is the same color card, but inverted. So the sap green, because it's very dark on the original color card, it's very bright here. But then medium tones like this, like the glaze, it just reads purple. The shade, the tone, and the tint, they are purple. So we don't have the exact, because this is more of a bluish purple. We don't have the exact purple, but the closest we found is this dioxazine or yeah, dioxazine, dioxazine purple. So this is the closest purple we could find to the sap green. It's not the exact opposite, but it's fairly close. So I'm just gonna show you, I'm gonna clean the brush really well, and I'm gonna show you what the purple looks like. And here's the part of the tutorial that's pure alchemy. First of all, we're gonna try to create a gray. We're gonna get try to create a gray mixing those two opposite colors. So this is the sap green that I had. So let me just bring some more sap green and a little bit of this color, the purple. And it's getting more neutral. So I can see that the color is a little bit more neutral. It's getting muddy. So let me bring some of this green again and some of the purple and see what happens. So this is becoming almost black, which this could be a good alternative. Not that I would just do it every single time, but it could be a good alternative to black. So we won't know if this is gray until we bring or we create a tint. So I'm just gonna get some of the titanium white. I'll put it right here. And then, okay, so I'm creating a tint and I see that it's very much purple. And this could be because the phthalo blue, it's synthetic pigment. So it may be that it takes over a lot more. So what I'm doing right now, moving the needle towards the green, I'm adding a little bit more green on that tint. And it's slowly, I can see how this is happening. And I just get so freaking excited when this happens. It's getting closer and closer to a gray. Let's see if I can just bring, oh, now it is gray. Now it is gray. I just can't believe these things happen, but it makes me so excited. So it's still very cold. So I'm gonna be um, um, stubborn and pretentious and see if I can make this cold gray a little bit more. Oh yeah, I can. A little bit more gray, and it's still very cool. So a little bit more of the sap green. And but yeah, this is a good example of how bringing the two opposites. And this is starting to get a little bit green, but there's always a fine point between those two colors in which we would be able to create a really neutral green. I would say this, we call this success. A little bit more, it's unbelievable, a little bit more white, titanium white to lift the value. But if you ask me, you can make green mixing. I mean, I'm sorry. If you ask me that you can make gray mixing green and purple, I would tell you that you're nuts. I would not believe it. But it is possible. And the reason why this happens with any color in the color wheel, any color, it's because they're opposite of each other in the color wheel, opposite of temperature, mostly. Yeah, opposite of temperature, I would say. But would I make a gray mixing these two colors? I wouldn't. I think that's really going deep into painting color theory. But it's nice that this could happen. But what I would do, and definitely I would bring this color into the picture. What I would do is bring some sap green and create variations of sap green that would be a little bit less pigmented. So I'm gonna see if I can make it here. This is sap green. And in order to make the sap green, and I could use this in a landscape, in order to make it a little bit less saturated, I would bring a little bit of the purple. Uh, would I use that? Absolutely yes. Maybe not with the idea of creating um, grays, but with the idea of making the green a little bit these are gorgeous greens, by the way. These are fantastic greens, creating variations of greens that they would be less saturated because of the addition of purple. So I'm going to conclude it here because I could go on and on, but I want to just make sure that we have time for feedback. But the bottom line is that with sap green, this could be a great staple green for a palette. Always consider making the green with primaries first. To me, that's the biggest lesson that we've learned this week. And then use the complementary to kick it up a notch in regards of pigmentation. And always, always, always consider bringing the opposite in temperature, the opposite of the color. And um, I would say like with this palette, you can create an absolutely stunning, rich, varied, sophisticated, elevated range of greens. So this concludes the tutorial. Leave us some comments if you have any questions or if you want to add something to it. And I didn't even use, did I? Oh yes, I used the gray, Portland gray. So thank you. I'm just gonna stop the recording and then we'll move on to feedback.